Yeah.
GB News was needed because there literally was no other voice. Everyone was saying the same thing.
GB News exists because there is a desperate need for fearless journalism that puts the people first.
GB News came on the scene as a disruptor, and it has always been a disruptor ever since.
The mainstream is all about keeping the status quo as it is, ticking along quite nicely. They don't want to ask difficult questions.
But journalism is journalism at the end of the day, and we're not here to serve any masters. Our masters are our audience.
Charlie Peters, he gave a voice to the victims of grooming gangs, and now, of course, it's led to a national inquiry.
GB News exists to make sure those concerns are put forward and people feel as though what they want to ask is put to those in power.
We don't take orders from anyone. We ask the questions our viewers and listeners want answering.
I know what's actually being discussed by my family and my friends.
Us ordinary, hard-working British people have had enough. We've had enough.
They're fed up with the same old establishment nonsense. Everything that we do is opening up conversations that others are afraid to go at.
Why are you illegally bringing people into Britain?
That is our job. Our job is to get to the truth.
If it's important to you watching or listening at home, then it's important to us as well.
That's what makes us the fearless champion of Britain.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
5 hosts, 5 opinions, 5 fearless debates,
5 unfiltered takes on the day's news.
5 reasons not to be anywhere else on Saturday night.
This is the Saturday 5.
You got me good there.
Britain's biggest Saturday night TV show.
It's not a bad brand.
Yeah.
Uncensored.
Very, very racy tonight on the unpredictable.
What did she say? Can you translate it for us?
And always entertaining.
And how can a country go from being led by William Wallace Saturday nights from 6 p.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You're going to want to stay tuned, trust me.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Michelle Dewberry, this is Jubes & Co with you.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie is here.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device. And as long as you have an internet connection, tune in to GB News, anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Miriam, you can't be serious. Scrapping the triple lock on state pensions? Madness.
Andrew, we just can't carry on pretending. The numbers just don't add up. We've got to be honest with people. We've got to face the facts. That's what people want.
Well, that's what you get on GB News and on Britain's Newsroom. Lively debates, lively conversation.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first, and we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Cates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m. only on GB News.
I think for far too long in this country, millions of people felt as though they weren't represented at all by the establishment media.
GB News was needed because there literally was no other voice. Everyone was saying the same thing.
GB News exists because there is a desperate need for fearless journalism that puts the people first.
GB News came on the scene as a disruptor, and it has always been a disruptor ever since.
The mainstream is all about keeping the status quo as it is, ticking along quite nicely. They don't want to ask difficult questions.
But journalism is journalism at the end of the day, and we're not here to serve any masters. Our masters are our audience.
Charlie Peters, he gave a voice to the victims of grooming gangs, and now, of course, it's led to a national inquiry.
GB News exists to make sure those concerns are put forward and people feel as though what they want to ask is put to those in power.
We don't take orders from anyone. We ask the questions our viewers and listeners want answering.
I know what's actually being discussed by my family and my friends.
Us ordinary, hard-working British people have had enough. We've had enough.
They're fed up with the same old establishment nonsense. Everything that we do is opening up conversations that others are afraid to go at.
Why are you illegally bringing people into Britain?
That is our job. Our job is to get to the truth.
If it's important to you watching or listening at home, then it's important to us as well.
That's what makes us the fearless champion of Britain.
Miriam, you can't be serious. Scrapping the triple lock on state pensions? Madness.
Andrew, we just can't carry on pretending. The numbers just don't add up. We've got to be honest with people. We've got to face the facts. That's what people want.
Well, that's what you get on GB News and on Britain's Newsroom. Lively debates, lively conversation.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first, and we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Cates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
5 hosts, 5 opinions, 5 fearless debates,
5 unfiltered takes on the day's news.
5 reasons not to be anywhere else on Saturday night.
This is the Saturday Five.
You got me. You got me good there.
Britain's biggest Saturday night TV show.
It's not a bad brand.
Yeah. Uncensored.
Very, very racy tonight on the unpredictable. What did she say? Can you translate it for us?
And always entertaining.
And how can a country go from being led by William Wallace Saturday nights from 6 p.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You're going to want to stay tuned, trust me.
Welcome to The Late Show Live with me, Bev Turner, here in Washington, D.C. Thank you for hanging on. Right, of course, it is October the 7th, and 2 years ago today, the worst atrocity in in living memory happened to the Jewish people. Here we go.
I think we're going to have it soon. I think we're going to have a deal. It's a hard thing for me to say that when for years and years they've been trying to have a deal with Gaza. But, literally for centuries, okay, if you really think about it. But we're going to have a Gaza deal, I'm pretty sure, yeah.
So 2 years ago today, of course, the worst atrocity to Jewish people. Hamas went into Israel, killed 1,195 people. Since then, the Palestinian health authorities say that Israel's 2-year-old ground and air campaign has killed more than 67,000 people in Gaza. Those figures, of course, are disputed. Tonight, Donald Trump was saying that the end is nigh. We've just seen that particular clip. And it feels like over the last 2 years, there have been non-stop protests condemning Israel's actions. Later today, there'll be marches all across the world. London, New York, where Ben Leo is going to be actually later tomorrow, also Sydney, and these are just some of the places that will call what Israel is doing in Gaza a genocide. Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Jenrick has branded plans for protests on the anniversary of the attack a disgrace, and Labour's handed more power to police so they can restrict repeated protests. At the weekend, of course, nearly 500 people were arrested for taking to London to show their support for the prescribed terrorist group, Palestine Action. So as the government listens to the critics of these protests, is it a case of be careful what you wish for? Let's go now to Asif Hussain, who is the CEO of humanitarian aid charity SKT Welfare. Asif, you are in Gaza tonight. Tell me what life is like there.
I'm actually in West Yorkshire, but we have a full team in Gaza who I speak to on a daily basis. And the horrors that they describe to us are just unimaginable. If we hadn't seen some of the footage ourselves, streamed on our mobile phones, on social media, and the videos that they send back to us, we wouldn't be able to believe it. I mean, as you said in your outline, over 67,000 people have died over the last 24 months. And that's just conservative figures. The Israeli humanitarian organizations and our own put that at somewhere around 250,000 because there's so many people buried under the rubble. We will only know a true figure. I mean, we may never know a true figure of how many people have died, but we're putting it around 250,000, and some of that we'll come to realize once we have a peace treaty and they start to lift the rubble, which is 80% of Gaza. 80% of buildings in Gaza have been destroyed. Over 170,000 people have been injured. 30,000 of them have been children. So some really horrific figures there in terms of what's happened over the last 2 years.
And Asif, even given that horrendous backdrop that you've just described, do you understand why the protests on the streets across the world feel like a step too far for Jewish people particularly that don't feel safe in their own countries? We had a terrorist attack in Manchester only a few days ago where a synagogue was attacked and people lost their lives. What's your response to the protests which will be seen around the world today?
So protests are legitimate. They are peaceful. By and large, the number of protests that we've had have been peaceful. So I'm pro-democracy, I'm pro-freedom of speech. What we can't have is the atrocities, like you mentioned, in Manchester, and the ones that are happening on a daily basis in Gaza as well, is unacceptable. And I've been on some of the marches. I've not heard any anti-Semitic comments. They've been pretty peaceful. What they've been demanding is for our government to put pressure on the Israelis to stop the war, to stop dropping bombs on tents and killing children. That's what I've heard when I've been there. We've been joined by people from the Jewish faith as well as other faiths as well. So to say that these are somehow anti-Semitic, I don't buy that. I mean, I have first-hand experience, and I said, Jewish Voices for Peace have been there. Many other groups, as well as the Jewish group, have been there supporting the fact that the war needs to stop, because this is a tarnish on the whole world as humanity, not as one particular faith group. This is tarnish the whole of humanity, and I don't know how we are going to recover from this.
Hamas could, of course, cooperate, hand over the hostages, take their own people out of harm's way very quickly. Should they do that?
I think what we have right now is a 20-point plan. It's quite similar to the plan that we had not many months ago, where unfortunately, the Israelis decided to break that ceasefire. And what we've seen now is thousands more people have been killed. Many hostages have died whilst they've been in captivity with Hamas also. All of that could have been prevented very simply by Netanyahu in particular. I'm going to outline him because he's the head of the Israeli government and head of the IDF as well. There was a peace process there. We didn't have to come all this way where Trump now had to intervene and force both parties to come around the table. We already had there. We had a pathway to peace. But unfortunately, it's the Israelis that broke that. And we've seen the devastating consequences as a result of that.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much, Asif Hussain, the CEO of humanitarian charity SKT. Let's go live to Melbourne, where Rebel News' Avi Yemeni is this morning. Good morning, Avi, to you here from Good Evening from Washington. Obviously, Australia is one of the first countries waking up on October the 7th. And what is going to be planned there? What's the mood there on the streets?
I've got to say, firstly, just listening, thanks for having me, listening to that complete dishonesty from your previous guest, from the numbers of within Gaza to the fact that these protests are not anti-Semitic. Complete and utter nonsense. We woke up in Melbourne just today, October 7 here now in Melbourne. We woke up in the most progressive suburb of Melbourne with graffiti on a building that says glory to the martyrs, and then more graffiti on a building nearby calling for October 7 to be repeated. Remember, this is the most progressive neighbourhood in Melbourne. It's a mask-off moment. This is exactly what the so-called Free Palestine movement believe in. And this is on the second anniversary of the most brutal terrorist attack in which they breached Israel's borders, they raped, they murdered, they kidnapped whoever they can get their hands on, and then they paraded their victims in Gaza to cheering mobs. And this graffiti, these messages are being put out in the progressive neighborhoods on a day where we're so close to peace, because this was never about freeing Palestine. This was never about a ceasefire. These people, they are telling us exactly what they want. They want this to continue happening. They want Hamas to win, meaning they want the annihilation of the state of Israel. And anybody that tells you any differently is either naive or lying.
But how do you square that circle, Avi? And I know that's like one of the biggest questions in hundreds of years of conflict, because they want the complete annihilation of Israel and of the Jewish people, and that is their golden aim. How can anybody change their mind on that? And also, I guess the second question for that is, therefore, do you think that Netanyahu's response has been proportionate 2 years on?
Look, I'm not the Prime Minister of Israel. I don't get to see and make all the decisions. I don't know how you would prosecute a war like this, in such a tough war against an opponent that is happy to die and to sacrifice their entire people for your destruction. But what we're seeing now is that there is a real chance for peace, and that is not because Hamas has suddenly agreed to do it. It's because Trump has brought the entire Arab and Muslim world. We're seeing suddenly Indonesia. They're talking at the UN saying shalom. In what world did we ever think this was possible? Where did we think Qatar and Saudi Arabia were going to be on board, the Palestinian Authority on board with a 20-point peace plan? I know your previous guest blamed Israel again, took no responsibility for Gaza, for what they for Hamas, what they did 2 years ago today. Instead blames Israel for not agreeing to what he claims to be the same deal that was on the table months ago, which is just not true. They need to take responsibility, and I think the people of Gaza need to stand up and take ownership of their future. They have a chance now thanks to President Trump. But today we need to remember what happened and how this war started 2 years ago.
Avi, what's the mood in Australia like about protests? Is your government also turning the dial to clamp down on dissent? Because for me, that's going to be an unfortunate, and has been evidence, but an unfortunate consequence of this is that the state just want more powers to shut people up.
Look, it's tough because you don't ever want to give the state more power, especially power-hungry Labor governments like we have in Australia, like you have in Britain. But, the problem is they don't need more power. We have laws here. You have laws in Britain against incitement to violence. If they implemented and enforced the current laws, you won't need anything else to do it. And I think this is a time, what we're seeing in Melbourne this morning, waking up, and I'm sure you're going to wake up to similar scenes. We've got protests planned here today by the pro-Hamas groups. I think people need to wake up. Every sensible person, rational person looking at this in Australia, in Britain, in Canada, need to see it for what it is. The far left and the Islamists and that are being cheered on by, right-wing Nazi lovers, they're out for our destruction, and we need to stand up and unite. We don't have to agree on anything. That's why I'm so happy to see Israel finally inviting Tommy Robinson on a state visit to the country. A proper patriot that's willing to stand up and call it out for what it is, call out a lot of this nonsense. For a long time that everybody was scared to say. You don't have to agree with everything he says. However, finally that recognition and that coming together of, sensible, like-minded people who stand against radical Islam and the radical left.
Yeah. Okay. Avi, such a pleasure to talk to you. I'm a big fan. Rebel News' Avi Yemini there, doing great work. Thank you so much for joining me on GB News. Such a pleasure. Right, I'm joined in the studio now by Democrat strategist Joel Rubin. Good evening. And political consultant Thomas Corbett-Dillon as well. Right, guys, in the UK, it is now October the 7th. Thomas, what have we learnt in the last 2 years? What do you think about when you consider that day?
Yeah, well, I think, it was obviously a horrific day, and I think this really comes down to showing how, aggressive the president has been on this issue. He's really put this as the forefront of his, administration. He's only been in for not really that long, if you think about it. In comparison to, if you think of what the British government are doing, I haven't seen Keir Starmer going out there trying to orchestrate a peace deal, even the EU trying to do a peace deal. It's all come down to the Americans. And I think what we're really seeing is actually, it's civilians on both sides. It's civilians in Israel, it's civilians in Palestine that are so ready for this to end. And the fact is that Hamas is not taking the deal. And the deal is on the table. I think it's the best deal they're going to get. I think it's time they took the deal. We will bring you in just a moment a statement that the Prime Minister has made actually in the last few moments about October the 7th. It will be interesting to see, his kind of response to this, because he's always treading on eggshells to some degree, isn't he? Joel, your thoughts as an American, the Middle East. It looks like, as Thomas said, Donald Trump is the person who's brought both sides together. In fact, it's more than that, because it is many more countries in the Middle East that have to collaborate to make this peace resolution work. Will it? And what are your reflections today?
Well, Bev, for me, this is very personal. I'm Jewish, fifth-generation American. I have family in Israel, and I remember October 7th 2 years ago, and I remember the reaction from many people who I considered friends and colleagues in the Democratic Party and on the left, who would call me and say, you know, Joel, those attacks against the Israeli civilians, well, they're soldiers anyways. And so for me, it's been very difficult to watch. I believe that the rise in anti-Semitism here in the United States from my side of the aisle has been deplorable. I fear what's happened in Britain. The Jews who were murdered in Manchester, that was not an aberration. That's part of a broader hate that's been ongoing and the incitement of that as well. And that's different from what's happening on the ground in Israel. And I think that's where we have to be very clear. There is a hard war in the Middle East that is complicated and multi-decades long that needs to be dealt with. But what we're facing here at home and what the British Jews are facing as well, and Australia as well, it's been very difficult in Australia. There should be no excuse and no room given to those who want to leverage that war for their own hate.
Let's have a look at this statement from the Prime Minister, some breaking news. In the last few minutes, Sir Keir Starmer released this statement. The Prime Minister said, our Jewish communities have endured rising anti-Semitism on our streets, in our country, and last week a horrifying terrorist attack on the holy day of Yom Kippur in Manchester. This is a stain on who we are, and this country will always stand tall and united against those who wish harm and hatred upon Jewish communities. Our priority in the Middle East, says the Prime Minister, remains the same. Release the hostages, surge aid into Gaza, and a ceasefire that can lead to a lasting and just peace as a step towards a two-state solution. A safe and secure Israel alongside a viable Palestinian state, he added. Today, on the anniversary of the atrocities of October the 7th, students are once again planning protests. This is not who we are as a country. It's un-British to have so little respect for others, and that's before some of them decide to start chanting hatred towards Jewish people all over again. Thomas, your reaction to that statement, when he says about this isn't who we are, he's right, isn't he?
Yeah, and and I think oftentimes it's actually the most privileged people in our country. If you look at some of these people, they're all in Oxford, they're in Cambridge. These people are supposedly the elites of our country, and they're out there leading these protests. I think of the guy who's just been elected as the president of the Oxford Union. You look at his grades, I wouldn't have got into Oxford with his grades, but these people are so privileged, they've been looked after by the system, and they're so privileged that they have nothing to fight against. There's no counterculture. So all of a sudden they've found this war in a distant country that they've made their sort of passion piece, and I think it's just showing you that the country is really sort of falling apart around this.
Yeah, it is. Let's go to New York now. Let's talk to Chef Guy Vaknin, who previously served in the Israel Defense Forces. Good evening, Guy. Thank you so much for joining me. There are going to be significant protests on the streets of New York tomorrow. We're sending our own presenter, Ben Leo, who's going to be down there as well. As somebody that served in the Israeli Defense Forces, somebody that now lives in New York, what is the conversation like there around this topic? Because you have a large Jewish community, of course, in New York.
Yeah, I mean, I've brought, in our restaurants anyway, I own a bunch of restaurants in New York, 8 of them. And in the past 2 years, we've seen over and over the protests. I mean, it's sickening that it's being done on October 7th out of all the days of the year, which is supposed to be a day of remembering the whole terrorist attack back home. I have tried to stay out of politics, to be honest, for the past 2 years and be out of it. But in the past 2 years, I've gotten threats, vandalism, people broke doors to the restaurant, wrote slogans all across our bathrooms. In the past few months, it's been worse and worse. The communities here are feeling it all the time. And me personally, because I'm in the front of the restaurant and a lot on social media, I've been getting a lot of hate and threats to my family, threats to me, a lot of crazy stuff that I would never think would happen here in New York or should not happen anywhere in the world on the basis of who you are or your faith or where you're from or where you were born. I've been in the States for 20 years now. So it's a long time ago since
Can I ask? Can I ask you, Guy, are those attacks from Muslims, Islamists, let's say, or are they from other people who see you as somehow being part of Netanyahu's decision-making process, and they have an opinion on that?
It's very odd. All of it, I mean, it's a group. Of course, there is Islamists, and they're egged on by, I don't know who funds the whole thing, but the majority of it comes from very liberal, very young, your usual. Some of them are even Jewish from the community, not understanding really what's going on over there, what is going on in the war. I think that it's saddening that at 2025, it feels like the stories of my grandmother and grandfather that got prosecuted in their own countries and ran away to Israel, or my wife's grandparents that had to go through the Holocaust, and all the businesses that were broken in Germany's in the 30s. It's sickening. It's sad that we're lapsing into this space again, where anti-Semitism is just accepted, and it's all over the internet bluntly, and anybody can say anything, and it's totally fine.
Okay, all right. Listen, Guy, we need to move on, but that is Chef Guy Vaknin. I really appreciate your time. Restaurateur, of course, in New York. Let me know your thoughts this evening. gbnews.com/YourSay. My panel will be with me until 2 o'clock. I could see you sort of grimacing there, Joel, to think what he's going through there in New York.
It's horrible. It's horrifying. At synagogue a couple of days ago, at the finish of Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the year for Jews, I looked up at the roof of our synagogue, and we had a sniper there to protect us from potential attacks.
Wow.
This is the United States of America.
Yeah.
This is Great Britain. This is Australia.
Yeah.
My family came here to seek refuge and freedom, and we've had a wonderful experience. Proud Americans. This is the kind of behavior that should always be called out and stopped. And I do think political leaders, just to add, Keir Starmer, great to have a statement today. Should have had that statement a long time ago. That kind of a statement needs to be made on a repetitive basis until people realize that what they are doing is inciting hatred.
Okay, let's take a quick gear change now, because of course it's been the Conservative Party conference. We're joined by GB News presenter Tom Harwood, who is at the GB News party at Conservative Conference. Tom, how lovely to see your familiar face. Right, I'm very impressed you're back home in your bedroom and you're not still at the party. That's not like you. You must be working hard in the morning. So tell us, Tom, round up for us here in America. What has the conference been like? A roaring success for the Tories?
Yeah, it's a difficult time for the Conservative Party. I have to say I've skipped out of the GB News party, where there was a lot of love for you, Bev, and a lot of love for Ben as well. The Shadow Justice Secretary, Robert Jenrick, was the guest speaker, and give a shout out, of course, to the new bureau in DC, a wonderful city, as well as all of the other brilliant GB News presenters that have been doing so much great work across the country. But it's really interesting. The Conservative Party has got this difficult position. If you were to look back 12 months ago, there were actually some polls that put the Conservative Party in first place when the Labour Party had sort of had this precipitous fall in the polls after its election victory, and you had all this freebie gate and the Sue Gray saga. All of this sort of stuff was hitting the Labour Party. But the party that then began to perform in the polls off the back of that was not the Conservatives after that party conference, after the leadership election. It was Reform UK that soared in the polls, that took that first place spot. And the Conservative Party has been trying to contend with that political reality. Sort of, what does it do? Where does it find its niche? There have been 2 days so far of the Conservative Party conference. The first day was all about borders. The Conservative Party brought out a new border plan, bringing forward a new sort of border force idea based on ICE in the United States, to try and have a removals force in the model of ICE, but also leaving these the European Convention on Human Rights, repealing the Human Rights Act, being able to deport people. That is now Conservative Party policy. But it's interesting. I think one of the most peculiar things about this party conference is that was almost the preset. that was something that was necessary but not sufficient for the Conservative Party to move on, because today has all been about the economy. And I think this is where the Conservative Party is going to begin to position itself over the course of the coming year. Yes, cauterising the wound on migration, but focusing on the gap in policy across the political spectrum in the United Kingdom. We've got a budget, of course, coming up next month. It seems that the Conservative Party want to focus on economic issues where they believe both Reform UK and the Labour Party lack real substantive answers.
Okay, Tom, it's so good to see you. Please give my love to everybody there, won't you? Say hi to everyone from me, and enjoy tomorrow at the Tory Party conference. Still to come tonight on The Late Show Live. President Donald Trump celebrates the Navy's 250th anniversary. Can you imagine Keir Starmer fronting an event like that? Well, we'll show you a little clip for a comparison. This is The Late Show Live, only on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
isn't it?
no,
Because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m.
Only on GB News.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk
No,
now?
that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
God bless the United States Navy.
Welcome back to The Late Show Live. I'm Bev Turner. That was President Donald Trump yesterday celebrating the 250th anniversary of the United States Navy. The American president and Sir Keir Starmer are, of course, charting very different courses whilst addressing their troops. Let's compare with our own Prime Minister.
Can I just say it's a real privilege to be able to come and see you here this morning. And I came for one purpose, and that was to stand here and have the opportunity to say to you a very simple thing, but a really important thing, which is thank you.
It's a different vibe, isn't it? It's a very, very different vibe. But does it matter? Well, let's talk now to US security expert and Washington resident, actually. Azim Ibrahim joins me in the studio. Good to see you. When you watched that footage of Trump, that was yesterday, of course, and he was in the sunshine. He was about it's about 3 hours south of here, isn't it, where he was, just a sort of an afternoon trip out. Do you look at that and think, yeah, I can see why he is a leader of such charisma, and that is what the troops need in a man compared to Starmer?
Yeah, no, absolutely. You see Donald Trump, he's almost seems as if he's in permanent campaign mode, always basically speaking out to the common man, speaking about the great military, etc., etc. And that resonates with the people. If you even look at his rallies, they're made up overwhelmingly with veterans, current and former military personnel, so that goes down really well, and a lot of bluster, a lot of political rhetoric, but that the people just love that, and that's what's won him 2 elections.
And I mean, Hegseth, the Secretary of War, as he now is, he went to talk to the troops last week. Very controversial. You've got to get fit. I don't want any fat soldiers. It was so forthright and unapologetic. And then you compare that with our own Prime Minister, who admittedly is not here to defend himself, and I'm sure he would have a different take on it, but a very different delivery method. Would the British public take more sort of Trumpian dialogue if, let's say, Farage was the next Prime Minister or somebody else? Would we accept it?
Well, the thing with Hegseth is that some of the soldiers that I've spoken to currently in uniform, they actually welcomed a lot of his rhetoric in terms of he's trying to bring discipline back into the military. The military in many has become very top heavy, very similar to the British military, and essentially he's trying to bring back a level of discipline. So that's certainly very much needed, I think, and that's gone down well. And I suspect we actually need something quite similar in the UK as well. And
of course, it's October the 7th in the UK now, Azim. It's a significant day. With your kind of expertise in the region, in the area of security, do you see this now being the final piece of this horrible puzzle, and that we will have the hostages released, and that there is going to be a security settlement and a peace in the Middle East now? Well, let's hope so. I think Donald Trump is probably the only president that could have actually delivered this, the intransigence from all sides, from the Israeli side and from the Palestinian, the Hamas side. Donald Trump is a no-nonsense politician. People do take what he says very seriously. He does not operate like other politicians, even other presidents. He does not operate within a system. Many other presidents, when they have to get things done, they have to get the party leadership on board, Congress on board. Trump does not operate like that. He decides and things get done. And so he made it clear to both sides that, look, this has to end, and let's just hope he puts his foot down and puts an end to this. The hostages can come home, and there'll be an end to the war, and the people of Gaza can live in peace, hopefully without Hamas being a shadow over them. And I would say probably America is one of the very few countries, and correct me if I've got this wrong, one of the very few that isn't at the moment enacting greater powers to clamp down on protest in the wake of the Middle East event. We're getting it in the UK. It was always inevitable. The Labour government just loved to enclose people, oppress them, take away their voice more and more, and that worries me deeply. Trump is not on that same page in any way, shape or form, is he? Yeah, we've seen the rise of anti-Semitism in the US and the UK and elsewhere, and it's absolutely grotesque. We've also seen the attacks in Manchester being followed by a burning of a mosque. And so one thing always leads to another, and we need to make it absolutely abundantly clear there's legitimate peaceful protest, and then there is hateful anti-Semitism, and there has to be a complete distinction between the two. Yeah, and do you think he's getting it right here? Do you think he's getting that balance right? Yeah, I think essentially
there is a process in which they're trying to get the balance absolutely correct. It's a very complicated system because you can't police people's thoughts, and so it's not an easy thing to do, but I think they are trying to do the best they can.
Fantastic, Azim, great to see you. Azim, Ibrahim, come in again soon, won't you, now, coming up on The Late Show Live. The Telegraph is leading with MI5 kept in dark in China spy trial fiasco. Also, tonight...
2030 is a threshold by which future generations will judge us.
Prince William opens up on why his kids make 2030 feel very real. 2030, I wake up in a cold sweat because of the UN agenda over 2030. He's marking the halfway point of the Earthshot Prize. We'll talk about that in just a minute. This is The Late Show, only on GB News.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique. And you're fighting like rats in a sack. But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask. OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician. Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits. You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless. But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show. Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Miriam, you can't be serious. Scrapping the triple lock on state pensions? Madness.
Andrew, we just can't carry on pretending. The numbers just don't add up. We've got to be honest with people. We've got to face the facts. That's what people want.
Well, that's what you get on GB News and on Britain's Newsroom. Lively debates, lively conversation.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first, and we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pearce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
And a fairer system also means ensuring that only British citizens can access welfare, because citizenship should mean something. Our approach will get the welfare bill down by £23 billion.
That was Shadow Chancellor Mel Stride talking today at the Tory party conference, vowing to crack down on benefits for non-UK citizens. He was in Manchester, of course, and the Conservatives are making big promises to fix Britain. But is it enough to save themselves? I'm joined by former advisor to Michael Gove, Charlie Rowley. Charlie, good evening to you. Or early hours of the morning. Charlie, lovely to see your face. It looks quite quiet there at the moment, but I imagine you've been enjoying the nightlife of Manchester. What's it been like today?
Well, I had heard that last night, Sunday, it was a little bit quiet, but since I've arrived, things have picked up. But I'm actually here at the GB News party, the Fly the Flag party, and I'm waving the flag. I know it's only about 7:45 p.m. your time, so, you know, your viewers might be getting ready to go out themselves, but we've had an absolute ball tonight here in Manchester at the GB News party. But you're absolutely right. Numbers on the whole are lower. We don't know whether that's because corporates have stayed away because there's not really much to do here as you're the leader of the opposition or you're the party in opposition and there's a few years to go until the next election, or whether it's members that have just decided, look, it's far too much to take when you've got a few years to go into the next election after suffering the heaviest defeat that the Tory party have ever made. So hard to say, but people are still quite chipper.
Charlie. It's not hard to say. It's not hard to say. It's not hard to say. I love you dearly, but it is not the corporates who have not turned up to that conference. I promise you, that is not why it's empty. It's because the Conservatives are completely lost in the political wilderness. Nobody knows who they are. Nobody knows what they stand for. Reform have taken the right. Labour are communist. So the Tory party don't quite know where to go. Where do they go next, Charlie?
Well, look, I think a lot of people will agree with that. Look, the Tory party cannot out-Farage, and Reform UK, under Nigel Farage, they've been saying a lot of what the public have been thinking for a long time. The silent majority of people have been very worried about things like immigration, particularly illegal immigration, and who is the party and who is the leader of any particular party that is able to stop that. We've had 14 years of a Conservative government. Some of those things were good, and I'm proud to be part of that former Conservative government at various points. But Nigel Farage is the one that seems to be leading in the polls, seems to be the one that's articulating things that many people care about, which is stopping those boats, deporting people, detaining people, deporting people that have come into this country illegally. This Labour government have come in, they've been in for 15 months, and they are, well, they've had the worst poll ratings of any leader that's come into office that's on record. So people don't believe in the Labour Party to deal with the issues that people care about, like stopping the boats, like dealing with illegal immigration. They don't trust the Tories because of the failures of the past. So, of course, people are going to look to the alternative. There is a market for the Tory party. I think if it deals with things like the economy, if it tackles things that people care about, if there's an offer to young people, for example, we're not hearing too many policies from any party about what's in it for young people these days. But are they articulating that? We've got a couple more days to go, so let's wait and see. But you're right, it's going to be tough for Kemi Badenoch and the Tories. But so far, she's holding her own. The big test will be the elections next May.
Charlie, I love being here in Washington, but being in my hometown of Manchester tonight, and so there was definitely somebody singing in the background just now. Are you prepared to name any names of who was singing? Who was that?
Well, I'm guilty as charged, Bev. I love a little sing-song. I'd love to have done a duet with you. If you were here, I'd love that. I would have loved that.
Next time, next time. This is our duet, Charlie. This is our duet. We could have done it in song.
We could have.
Thank you so much, Charlie Rowley. And I would. Go on, we've got to go, we've got to move on. Right, let's look at some of the newspaper front pages, shall we? The Telegraph are leading with this story about MI5 kept in the dark in China spy trial fiasco. I haven't had time to work that out. I'm looking at my panel here and wondering if they've managed to scan through that particularly complex sounding story. The Daily Mail are running on the biggest phone gang smashed, a gang responsible for exporting almost half of the mobile phones stolen on the Britain's streets have been smashed in an extraordinary police sting. Good, I can tell you. And they sent the mobiles to Hong Kong high-rise. Honestly, complex. It just absolutely blows my mind, the organised global gangs which have got our country under their thumb. The Guardian leads with Labour's new visa rules put NHS at risk. worn nurses, and of course another picture there, of course, of Jilly Cooper, who has died, a wonderful novelist. The Times is leading with Prime Minister's anger at student protests on October the 7th. This is Keir Starmer urging students not to take part in what he's called un-British protests, marking the anniversary of the October the 7th Hamas massacre today, and is accusing those who call for violence against Jews as a total loss of empathy and humanity. The Washington Post is leading with VA spends billions on dubious, even fraudulent disability benefits. Military veterans are swamping the US government with dubious disability claims, including cases of brazen fraud totaling tens of millions of dollars that are exploiting the country's sacred commitment to compensate those harmed in duty, according to the Washington Post. I'll talk to my American guest about that in just a moment. Yeah, get your head around that one there, Joel. I could see him grimacing, going, really? And the New York Times, Trump has threatened to use emergency powers to bypass courts and deploy troops. The president said he was considering invoking the Insurrection Act to assume emergency powers and send federal troops to Chicago and Portland over local objections. And Governor J.B. Pritzker of Illinois called the mobilization an unconstitutional invasion. Well, I'm delighted to say that I'm now joined down the line from London by Benjamin Butterworth. Benjamin, thank you so much for staying up and talking to me this evening. Now, what should we talk about? I don't know whether you've had time as well to look at this story about MI5 being kept in the dark about China's spy trial. What's that story about?
So this is quite extraordinary, really. A year or two ago, there were two men arrested and eventually charged with spying for China. So they were accused of being in a meeting where MPs were planning to have tougher sanctions, restrictions on the Chinese state, and they were accused of being paid to record that meeting and send it back to Chinese intelligence. Now, they were charged with that, and it was due to come to trial, but it's collapsed because the government refused to allow for China to be referred to as quote-unquote the enemy, which meant that there was no longer a trial that could go forward. Now, according to the Daily Telegraph, Jonathan Powell, who is the Prime Minister's security advisor, one of his closest aides and someone who's been around Labour governments for many decades, was behind this decision. And so this trial has collapsed. The two men who were charged and accused will no longer stand trial. And I think it raises massive questions about how we deal with threats of spying, of espionage, of untoward behaviour from a country like China.
Absolutely, Benjamin. Let's move on to this story in the Daily Mail about, because I just need some good news here, folks. This is about the biggest mobile phone gang being smashed. How did we manage to do that?
Well, I mean, how did we manage to get in the state that we are, where 70,000 phones were nicked last year? London is crazy for this. But the good news is that this organisation that is said to be responsible, according to the Daily Mail front page, for 40,000 phones stolen last night and sent to mainland China and Hong Kong. It's alleged that two Afghan men were the gang leaders, and they were thought to be responsible for shipping those 40,000 phones out of Britain. Now, the sheer scale of this problem on Britain's streets, especially in the big cities, especially in London, this is the kind of thing that is undermining our law and order. And so, what you have to hope is that these people can be prosecuted. If they're Afghan nationals, why are they still here? And then hopefully it'll mean that the streets are safer.
Absolutely. Right, thank you, Benjamin. You're going to be joining me in the next hour. Thank you so much. I'm just looking at what you've been saying at home here. Gordon, thank you, Gordon, for getting in touch. Says Trump versus Starmer. Firstly, Starmer isn't the head of the armed forces, like what the president is there. Here is the king. Good point. Second, when Donald Trump enters a room, he owns it. When Starmer enters a room, again, Donald Trump owns it. And thank you, Gordon. He then says, and Bev Turner owns both of them with a twinkle in her eyes and a set of pliers. Thank you so much, Stuart. Gordon Stewart says, Starmer always looks scared when he's next to Trump. And let me have a look what else you've been saying. The Tories, says Colin, the Tories aren't trying to out Farage. They're actually being honest and doing with the due diligence to make sure they can actually deliver their policy. And a couple of people saying, Charlie Rowley, great to see you, but wondering if he had enjoyed the party and he wasn't entirely sober during that interview. Right, more coming up in the next hour, including Chicago on fire. Unrest erupts on the city's streets as anti-ICE protesters clash with officials. Should the National Guard be sent in, and would you want to see that in the UK? That's all coming up next.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
isn't it?
no,
Because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There, you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique. And you're fighting like rats in a sack. But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask. OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician. Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits. You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
And
say,
now you've lost it. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless. But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show. Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's the Late Show Live. In this hour, the very best politics from the US and the UK. Stay with me. On the Late Show Live tonight.
I think we're going to have it soon. I think we're going to have a deal. It's a hard thing for me to say that when for years and years they've been trying to have a deal with Gaza.
That was Trump today talking about the resolution in the Middle East 2 years ago. Of course, today we saw one of the most shocking days in modern history, October the 7th. Donald Trump says that he has got it sorted. It could be any day now. Let's hope it is soon, because...
Shame on you! Shame on you! Shame on you! Shame on you!
A day of international protest is planned all around the world. Pro-Palestinian marches are going to take place despite the sensitive anniversary for Jewish people. We're going to speak to people from all over the world, Gaza, New York and Australia. Meanwhile, at the Conservative Party conference... Oh dear, the Tories are lost in the political wilderness, all those empty chairs in Manchester. We're going to discuss how they could possibly find their way back with two enthusiastic Tories who are presumably asking ChatGPT for a fix right now, also tonight. country. Who does it better, Donald Trump or Keir Starmer? Plus more stories from the still warm papers, including Generation Z stepping out of their moral vacuum and into church. And we're live in Washington, of course, just yards from the White House, bringing you the stories that America are talking about today, including this.
They see me rolling, they hating, patrolling and trying to catch me riding dirty, trying to catch me riding dirty, trying to catch me riding dirty.
We'll explain what that is. Trump has threatened to override courts and deploy troops in some very angry states.
And I don't really talk like Ben Whishaw. No, I am from Peru. I'm Paddington Bear from Peru.
A huge showbiz row has broken out. The producers of Paddington Bear are suing satirical comedy show Spitting Image. Find out why later. I'm Bev Turner, this is The Late Show Live, and this is the second hour. My guests are still with me. And if you were listening on the radio and I said I'll explain what that is, let me ask my guests if we can explain what that was. That was somebody being pulled on a trolley, face down, presumably a protester. Did you know what that was?
Well, it was a video that said ICE, so Immigration and Customs Enforcement. So my assumption is that they arrested somebody who either was protesting or who they believe was here illegally. But it's pretty grotesque, to be honest, to be parading somebody like that around from a government account. I think that's pretty un-American and not something we should be doing here.
Sending out a message. Right, let's move on. We're going to be with you guys. Remember, there's no advert breaks in this hour, so do not go anywhere. And we're asking right now, what is the future of the Tory party? Day 2 of the Conservative Party conference wrapped up today. It included the usual spin about big spending cuts, economic responsibility and the pledge for tougher borders. All a bit late, but it also came with the promise of a Trump-style immigration crackdown. Have a listen.
We will also create a new removals force in the Home Office, doubling the current budget to £1.6 billion. And by stripping away all of those legal obstacles that I've described and doubling the budget, we can remove 150,000 people a year that have no legal right to be here. That is 750,000 over the course of the next Parliament. This illegal immigration scandal will end.
So that was Chris Philp. But let's go live to the Tory Party conference where former Conservative Minister Tom Pursglove is this evening. Thank you, Tom, for joining me. You've been enjoying yourself at the GB News party. Lovely to see you. Right, immigration, it's such a huge issue. And the Conservatives don't seem to have any particularly new plan, do you?
No, I don't agree with that. I actually think that what we've got here is a credible end-to-end policy, a deterrent at the front end. So we've consistently said that you need to have a Rwanda-type response in order to address this, but also a really firm policy response at the back end, saying that if you come to this country illegally, you will be removed. And I think that's precisely what the British people expect. But we're also willing to make the legal changes necessary to ensure that that happens. So I think this is a really credible offering that responds very directly to the British people's concerns.
But Tom, why did you not do this for any of the 15 years that you were in power? It's such a simple question, it's such a simple issue. You had all of that opportunity.
I think it's fair to say that political opinion on this issue, both within the Conservative Party but also more widely, has shifted enormously in recent times. What you've seen under this government is this issue completely out of control. They've made the situation 50% worse. The steps that we were taking prior to the election were beginning to turn the tiller. When you think that we closed 180 asylum hotels, when you think about the fact that we cut net migration by half, it was too late. I accept that. But I do think that what Kemi's right in saying is that something has to change. We have to have a really clear policy offering, but we also have to show the British people are working so that they can have confidence that if they elect a Conservative government, we will deliver on this. And I think that's precisely what this policy prescription does, unlike other parties.
I have to say I'm full of admiration for Conservatives at the moment, of coming out to put up a defence in the sort of eye of this, look, this embarrassing scenario where there's nobody sitting there. And I know that parties that get defeated in elections, there's always a period that there's a sort of bruising hangover that you have to get over. I understand that. But how many of you are going to end up just going to the Reform Party by the next election?
Look, I have, throughout my entire adult life, been a Conservative. I'm a proud member of the Conservative Party. I stand by our record. And actually, I think when you look, for example, at the fact that we delivered Brexit, that allowed us to be able to cut net migration by half in the way that I was able to do in the last few months of that government. I think that we took the steps to try and improve the legislative basis by which we could tackle this issue. Look, this is a difficult time. We were routed at the general election last year. There's no gloss that can be applied to this that puts it in a better light. We were humiliated. It was appalling, and we let people down, and we were right to suffer at the ballot box as a result of that. But that's why we want to take the steps necessary to rebuild that trust, really take seriously the message that voters sent to us at that election, and come forward with a credible set of policies that respond to that, not just making soundbite announcements, but actually saying these are the things that we are going to do to improve this situation.
And you know what's amazing, Tom, is I never thought I'd miss Rishi Sunak. But I do miss Rishi Sunak, actually, and I think it was a massive failure of comms. Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do. I didn't think anything could be worse, but it turns out somebody can be worse. And I think it was a massive failure of comms on the part of the Tories to not communicate who that man is, because he's still there. I presumed he would be on the first jet over to California. I thought he was the ultimate technocrat. He didn't give a, you know, the proverbial about our country, and it turns out that wasn't actually true. What a failure of communication to not allow the British public to see him for who he is, which is clearly a decent man who had actually conservative attitudes.
A thoroughly decent man, actually, in many respects. Someone who was absorbed in the detail, that trusted in his ministers to get on and try and deliver on the direction that he set. And that allowed me to take, in those last few months of the government as the legal migration minister, the steps that I was able to take that was beginning to improve things. And then this government turned up on day one. They cancelled Rwanda. Well, that's a disastrous decision. I mean, if I was a Home Office minister now on the Labour side, I'd be really regretting that decision. I do rather think that Shabana Mahmood must be thinking, I really wish we had a Rwanda-type solution that we could call upon at the moment. They've cancelled the military bases. We'd kitted out military bases to provide that cheaper accommodation, to act as a bit of a deterrent, to try and improve that situation, to get hotels closed, to continue that journey that we were making. And they scrapped it. So what they're actually doing is delivering on many of the Rishi Sunak policies that they're now reinstating. But the difference between us and them is that the big legal change that involves the ECHR, the Refugee Convention, and other aspects, they are not willing to take. And they will not solve this issue all the while that this rumbles on. And that's why I'm really pleased that this week Kemi has acted upon the concerns that people like me have been raising about those steps that we need to take to address this. But I agree with you. I think people went into that election, they cast their votes thinking that this would be a decent Labour government that would respond to their concerns. It's been anything but. It's been an absolute disaster. And on the key metrics, everything has gone backwards. If that's what change represents, I mean, it just blows my mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Tom, thank you so much. Nice to talk to you. Former Conservative Minister there, Tom Pursglove, at the Tory Party conference, who clearly had avoided the liberally poured wine at the GB News Party. Not liberal wine, we don't serve liberal wine at the GB News Party, but liberally poured. Right, let's bring my panel back in. Democrat strategist Joel Rubin and political consultant Thomas Corbett-Dillon. Joel, what are your feelings when you're looking at a former Tory MP, a minister there, who's, you know, he's trying to put up a defence.
Yeah.
You mean, you know, you're in a sort of similar position as a Democrat in that you lost the last election. You know what it's like to be now kind of in opposition and how you've got to carry on and pull yourself up by the bootstraps. It's not easy, is it?
It's not, but well, Bev, you really had him sweating there, I have to say. He was really nervous and did not like to answer your questions because he didn't have a good answer as to why they didn't actually execute on what he was saying now was their vision. But as a Democrat, it's a real problem. We are not yet fully on board with why we lost the last election. Our ideas are not yet consolidated either. We do, however, have the benefit here, which is that we have a calendar and a cycle, and we have clear elections, and people stay in office for set periods as opposed to a parliamentary democracy like you all have. But I think they're lost. I think they're lost. We're nothing even close to where we see the Tories right now.
Yeah. And Thomas, what about you? I could see you writing things down and shaking your head a little.
Well, you know, it just really, it kind of annoys me. It kind of annoys me that they don't admit that so many of the problems in this country is because of the Conservative Party. You know, and I say this as someone who's only ever voted for the Conservative Party. You know, you won't often get me defending Tony Blair, but if you look at the numbers, his government let in about 200,000 people a year. The Tories were letting in 700,000. Yeah. So for them to sit there and say, you know, we've got to do this, we've got to do that, why didn't they do it? And you said that perfectly. But one thing I want to just talk, you mentioned about Rishi Sunak. I think don't be under the illusion that he was trying to get jobs in Silicon Valley. They didn't want him. They don't want him.
Oh, really?
Oh my God. And you know what he regrets the most? Remember, he gave up his green card.
Scandalous.
He gave up his green card when they found out his wife had a green card. He had a green. He gave it up, and of course now he's regretting. I bet he wishes he had that. So you know.
There was I thinking. So you may not be familiar with this, Joel, but Rishi Sunak's constituency is in a place called Richmond, but in Yorkshire. Okay. Like he's in the cold. I'm not saying it's grim up north because I'm from the north, but you know it's not necessarily where a sort of somebody that might be more inclined.
Not the beach.
No, and he might be more at home in California, like I said, at his mansion. I mean, his family and his wife's family have unfathomable wealth, and yet he is still there doing his constituency
He's trying to get into Silicon Valley
every Friday, talking to people about their blooming
but that's how you get out of the woods.
All these...
That's how you rebuild. That's how you get out of the woods. It's how you regenerate ideas, by being in touch with the people. That's where the ideas need to come from.
Do you think that's what he's doing? Do you think he's just hanging out in the tea rooms of Yorkshire to find out what the public wants?
You know, maybe he took a little bit of humble pie there. I mean, that was a pretty brutal period that he had in his last several months. I hope he did. He's young enough. He probably has another couple of political lives left.
Yeah. Get in touch with me at ugbnews.com/your say. I love to hear from you this evening. Still to come, though. Remember, there's no breaks. Don't go anywhere. I'm just telling you what's coming up next. This.
How do you want to be remembered? If I die, everything just goes away. How would you, if you could be associated with one thing, how would you want to be remembered?
I want to be remembered for courage for my faith. That would be the most important thing. The most important thing is my faith.
A religious revival is underway. Generation Z is leading a turnaround in church attendance across the UK and America. We'll bring you the details and a fascinating interview on that next. This is The Late Show, live only on GB News. They're calling it a modern-day spiritual revival. Generation Z, particularly men, are going to church. It's a part of a new faith resurgence. And in the UK, there's been a major spiritual U-turn. New data by the Quiet Revival reveals that church attendance of 18 to 24-year-olds has risen by 16%. That's quite a lot. And in the US, Generation Z officially attends church more than any other generation. One man who is helping to lead that change is Gen Z influencer Bo Loudon. He joins me now. Bo, good evening. Thank you for joining me. Now that I'm talking to an American, do I have to say Generation Z? Or will you forgive me if I still call you Generation Z with my British accent? Now, listen, it's a fascinating phenomenon, this, isn't it? And was it happening before the death of Charlie Kirk, or has that been a significant catalyst?
Yes, ma'am. You know, it's been unprecedented. I've never seen anything like it. I mean, I have so many friends reaching out, telling me that they've gone to church for the first time in years, or friends I've really worked on and tried to get to come around and just, you know, haven't been able to. And, you know, like President Trump said just a few hours ago, if you have a country without God, it's not going to go too well, and it's not going to be much of a country. So I think this has been a massive revival for Gen Z. And like you guys talked about earlier, Barna released that study showing that this is the most church-attending generation ever in America. So it's been massive, and Charlie had a massive impact on that because of his faith and that being the core thing he wanted to be remembered for.
But even before Charlie Kirk was assassinated, There was something going on, Bo, across the world, and I think particularly in the UK and America, and maybe that's just because they're the two countries I know best, which was a sort of dearth of meaning in the lives of young men. They came through this bizarre pandemic time where the government took their freedoms away. They either weren't allowed to go to school or they weren't allowed to see their friends, and it's incredibly destabilizing for that generation. And so is the motivation to just cling on to something that gives them meaning and a deeper sense of purpose when they wake up in the morning?
Yes, ma'am, 1,000%. You know, when they give us these medications that are these antidepressants that are supposed to make us happier and don't, or they indoctrinate us with all these, you know, LGBTQ ideologies or whatever it may be, things that just make us more depressed, that plague our mind and ruin our lives and put us in the worst possible mental state. The only escape that my generation's able to find out of that has been God and Jesus Christ. You know, and we have massive Gen Z leaders like Cliff and Stuart Conneckley who have done this similar work to Charlie Kirk. You know, toured college campuses and talked to people about it and changed minds, and then put it out there on social media for millions and millions to see, kids of my generation. And we have so many leaders like this now. Charlie was one big one, and then Cliff and Stuart and people like that as well. We have Pastor Ben Graham as well. He's going out and leading a spiritual charge in the U.S., and they're gonna go global with that even too. So we have big things coming, and big things have been happening. Charlie was just one of the bigger pushes that emphasized on how important it is for this generation to come back to God.
There's such a strong, stark difference, Bo, between the way that American people will talk openly and unapologetically about being Christians, and the way that British people, even if they've been raised as a sort of cultural Christian, they are embarrassed about maybe a feeling of spirituality that they might experience, or there's a bashfulness about religion in the UK, and it comes also from our leaders. You have very prominently, openly Christian presidents repeatedly. We don't have that in the UK. And I wonder what the movement will be in the UK. Like, what will it take to bring more people to this particular culture? Like, will it be a celebrity, somebody famous who maybe says, I am also a Christian? I don't know, it's difficult to articulate what I mean by this, but how does this momentum continue? What will it take?
I think it just takes a revival like we're having here in the U.S., and I've seen it. I mean, there have been massive groups of people and prayer vigils in the UK, particularly around Charlie Kirk. But I was even just invited, you know, to a massive gathering in the UK, and it happened to be the day after Charlie's life was taken. So that was huge, and there's been hundreds of thousands in the streets of the UK. I think you guys are on the track for it now. The generations there are ready for a change, and you know, networks like yourselves putting this stuff out there. I mean, it's an information war, it's a spiritual war, but it takes the masses. It takes the masses to agree and take charge, and people to get active, and that's exactly what's happening all around the world now, because you know, Charlie pushed a lot of that, and it planted a seed in a lot of people's minds.
Bo, great to talk to you again. Thank you so much. Bo Loudon there, a Gen Z influencer in Florida. My panel is still here. Thomas, as a fellow Brit, I saw you nodding when I said about the fact that they are unapologetically Christian and religious here. We are so different in the UK. We're quite squeamish about spirituality anyway, aren't we?
Definitely, and I realise how Americanized I've been, because I've been saying Gen Z, and when you said that, I was like, oh gosh.
That's okay.
But you know, something I think that we're not touching on here, which I think is really important, is that this increase in the Christianity is particularly in the Catholic Church. So what we've seen today, well, it was a couple of days ago when they announced this new Archbishop of Canterbury, a female Archbishop of Canterbury, that has just pushed so many, particularly young men, further and further into the traditional Catholic Church. These men are not looking for churches that are all about diversity and welcoming in everyone. They are looking for old school traditional Catholicism, and that is in particular rising in the US. You look at J.D. Vance, who is very openly Catholic, and you know, Erica Kirk and all these people, they're all pushing into the Catholic Church. And I think that's happening in England. This Church of England, the decision to put a female archbishop, they think that they're going to appeal to these people, the left-wing people, and say, oh, look how cool we are.
She might
It is
be
the
quite
opposite.
good, mightn't she? She might be quite good at that
It doesn't
job.
matter. Look, it's about tradition. This is what these young men in particular are crying out for. If you look at the numbers, it's the men that are joining. It's not females. It's young men that are joining the Catholic Church.
Do you know what I also think is going on a bit here, Joel? And it is about this spiritual vacuum. It's about fatherless boys.
Yeah.
It's about so much. But I also think there's a sense in which people are trying to reclaim our identity in the UK. We're seeing it with the flags. And other religions, and I will say Islam, actually, is unapologetically loud, organised, galvanised and influential.
Very, very active. And you know, as an American Jew and a proud American Jew, I got to tell you, we're having a similar dynamic as well. We have seen an increase in synagogue attendance, particularly since October 7th.
Interesting.
And it just brings up this question about when their tragedy strikes, when people feel untethered, that things are going in the wrong direction, maybe we all come back to our roots and we try to find connection and commonality that way. I think that's the beautiful thing of America, which is that we can have diverse religions here and all be engaged and active in it. Where it boils over to the bad is when we start seeing attacks and what we talked about earlier. But I think in the Jewish community as well, it's a greater increase now in attendance.
Do you know what I mean, Thomas, about the kind of rise of Islam in the UK and Islamism, and the two are different, and a young generation of men who go, well, you don't represent me. I grew up reading the Lord's Prayer at school and doing Christmas and Easter, and I've never really understood what I was doing. I was just kind of going through the theatre of it, but maybe there is something in this, and maybe in order to reclaim my British identity, I'm going to go back to church and see what I find. I think that's part of the reason.
Because otherwise you're just like a rudderless, like if there's nothing to live for, what is it that why are we existing, you know? So I think you're seeing that, and your point on Islam is very important because they have such a community. They go to these mosques and they go to all that, and you walk around a lot of towns in England, what do you see? The church has been turned into restaurants, they're nightclubs.
Yeah.
You know, where are young English boys supposed to meet, supposed to find community? The pubs are all closing down. You know, where are these people supposed to get together and work? And it is now coming back to the church.
I think it's an absolutely wonderful cultural shift. I genuinely do, and I don't see myself as I see myself as a cultural Christian. That's certainly how I was raised, but I don't feel the spirituality in the same way. And I'm quite jealous of people who do. Actually, I'm quite envious of people who do.
You can just embrace it. That's the way. That's what a lot of people are doing.
Hey, I'm only just here.
Hey, welcome to America. Welcome back.
Lots of churches in America.
It happens in America.
I mean, never say never, right? But I mean, look, I don't believe this is it. I believe there is, of course, there is another spiritual dimension that we don't understand. I understand that, but I just think it must be wonderful for these young boys, particularly, to have a sense of meaning and purpose and something to look to when they're not sure what is right and what is wrong, because without that, where do they look? The internet.
Yeah.
Right, still to come this evening on The Late Show Live, we're going to have a look at the biggest headlines in tomorrow's/today's papers. We're not going anywhere, only on GB News.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello, very good morning to you. I'm here with the GB News weather update coming to you from the Met Office. Now for many today it is going to be another largely fine one, except we do have a band of rain that's pushing its way southwards, already across Scotland and Northern Ireland and starting to feed into parts of Northern England, and it is going to make its way a bit further south across other parts of Northern England, perhaps into the far north of Wales as we go through the day. But it's mostly light, just a bit of drizzly rain, nothing especially heavy. And then to the north of this, some decent bright sunny weather developing across much of Scotland and Northern Ireland, and also to the south some bright sunny breaks as well, and it's here where we're going to have the highest temperatures. We're looking at highs of around 17 or 18 Celsius, and the sunshine really will play a part in how warm it's going to feel. If you get some decent sunshine, again, it's going to feel pretty warm indeed. As we go through the end of the day, staying fine across much of central southern England and Wales, some late sunshine here, but meanwhile across parts of Northern England, a cloudier, damper end to the day. Meanwhile across Scotland and Northern Ireland, well, the the rain will have cleared through, so it's largely fine to end the day here, albeit a few blustery showers across the far north of mainland Scotland, also affecting Orkney and Shetland as well. Then as we go overnight, that band of rain, still pretty light, is going to continue to edge a bit further south, so pushing into the Midlands and across much of Wales. Ahead of this, towards the south, there could be some pockets of mist and fog developing, similar to this morning really. Meanwhile, further north, there are also going to be some clear skies. Here it could turn a little chilly. Rural spots may get close to freezing. A touch of grass frost isn't out of the question. And for many, yeah, a bit of a fresh start, except for those under the cloud, under the drizzly rain. And all of that is going to edge a bit further southwards still as we go through tomorrow, pushing across southern counties. Again, nothing heavy, just a bit of damp weather for a little bit of time. Brighter skies following across other areas, albeit a bit more rain pushing into the far north-northwest of Scotland and some blustery winds here. Elsewhere, light winds for many, so feeling warm again in any sunshine.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
On the radio, that is a shot of Greta Thunberg and some of her friends with Palestinian flags being welcomed by a crowd. They deported their Gaza-bound flotilla. She made a statement on Instagram this evening. We might play you some of that if we can bear it without pulling out our own eyeballs. But we're going to look at the front page of the paper though. But first of all, we just watched that weather broadcast. And Joel, what did you say about our weather forecast?
It looks bad everywhere. I'm sorry. Stay here. Better, safer.
That's the American analysis.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, everyone at home. Oh, it was beautiful today. 80 degrees.
Perfect
pretty
weather.
much. Right, let's look at the newspaper front pages, shall we? Daily Express. Tories pledge blitz on scumbag store thieves. Good. About time too. It shouldn't really be the headline from the party conference though, should it? Yeah, we're going to catch bad people. Stop the press. The Eye are going with UK Gaza protests going ahead today on the anniversary of October the 7th massacre. The Sun, romp in peace, paying tribute to Jilly Cooper, the fantastically successful novelist. She combined posh and sex in a very unique way, very, very British. And the Daily Mirror on the Gaza border. Hope in hell. They say peace talks begin, but the bombs are still falling 2 years after the October the 7th horror. The Washington Post here in America are leading with VA spending billions on dubious, even fraudulent disability benefits. Apparently military veterans are swamping the American government with dubious disability claims, including cases of brazen fraud totaling tens of millions of dollars. They're exploiting the country's sacred commitment to compensate those harmed in duty. That's going to be a very tricky one for Donald Trump to handle because, of course, he holds the troops in very high regard here in America. That is the Washington Post investigation. The New York Times, Trump threatening to use emergency powers to bypass the courts and deploy the troops. We're going to be talking about this in the next half an hour. The president said he was considering invoking the Insurrection Act to assume emergency powers and send federal troops to Chicago and Portland over local objections. Let's go to Benjamin Butterworth, who is in London, to go through some of these stories with us this evening. Benjamin, thank you so much. What do you want to talk about here, Benjamin? Should we look at the Mirror? I imagine that's right up your street, isn't it? And the Mirror are talking about the Gaza border and hope in hell. Very bleak at a time when we're hoping that actually there's going to be a resolution, a full release of the hostages, frankly, any day now.
Yes, I mean, I've been to the Gaza border several times. It's a real reminder of just what a tiny place Gaza is in Israel. You know, when I was in Tel Aviv in June, you could actually feel the bombs from Tel Aviv that were dropping in Gaza. That's how small these areas are for people not familiar. And it's worth noting that Friday is the deadline for nominations for the Nobel Peace Prize. So I think Donald Trump is putting a particular pressure on getting this peace deal as soon as possible because he'd rather like that prize. You know, There's been lots of people that have been out protesting and posting about Gaza in the last 2 years. And I think for lots of those people, it will be straightforward that they're horrified at the images of kids, of innocent people being attacked and bombed. And they should be outraged because war is a human failure. But what I think has been disgusting has been in the last couple of days since that attack in Manchester, and I think we're both from Manchester, and the fact that some of those protesters were going out and raising the Palestinian flag, celebrating the ideology that saw 2 innocent British Jews murdered while their blood was still on the floor. And I think it has really exposed that there is a serious section of that movement that is not about peace at all, that doesn't want this war to end. They want a war in perpetuity to try and destroy Israel, and they have exposed themselves in the last couple of days for that truth. So I don't think we should be lectured anymore by these protesters on what peace and what sanctity looks like, because I don't think it's their real goal.
So do you think the protest should be clamped down upon, Benjamin, in London?
Do you know, it's a really difficult question. I think what the government suggested is that you won't have the right to do it every single Saturday, which is basically what we've had. Or, for that matter, today, Tuesday, October 7th, the idea that they're allowed to protest on university campuses, which is another one of the front pages, I think is blatantly an insult. It's blatantly incitement. It's blatantly trying to undermine, trying to offend, trying to scare Jewish people and their allies. And so I don't think that should be allowed. The truth is that you shouldn't ban the protests altogether, because if you ban one protest you don't like, then who's to say another government can't come along with a very different idea and do it in return? But I don't think the laws that we have in the UK were designed for people to just constantly go out on the same issue with the same point, sometimes not even with a point, because that is stretching police so thinly. And the Prime Minister said at the weekend, we need all the extra resources for synagogues to protect them, and still the protesters went out to cause problems and to insult people. So at that point, is it a protest or is it actually quite dubious?
Should we bring in our panel, Benjamin? I'd like you to all talk together. That's what I like. A good round table conversation where everybody can disagree and we all still get along at the end of the day. Let's talk about this story in the New York Times. So this is Trump threatening to use emergency powers to bypass the courts and deploy the troops. Joel, do you want to just explain this to our British viewers of what's happening here?
Sure. Well, right now what the president is doing is he is seeking to move National Guard troops, which are governed by the governors of the states, to move them into, in this case, Illinois, to try to deal with whatever he deems needed. I frankly don't think it's necessary, but he's getting blocked by the courts, who are saying that this is not an acceptable path for that use. So now he wants to go around the courts and invoke the Insurrection Act, which would mean there need to be an American insurrection, which there is not. The last insurrection was on January 6, 2021 by his supporters. So this would be an end around the courts, an end around the state governors who have control of their National Guard troops, and moving the American military basically into encampments in American cities and declaring war on the American people. It just doesn't make any sense.
Thomas, does it make sense?
Absolutely, I think it's fantastic. And the idea that these unknown judges can block the president from doing what his
the rule of law.
No, but the people elected him to do this. Portland is out of control. You know, they took over the city. And what we've seen today in Chicago, where the local police have been ordered that they should not protect any ICE agents. And then to go even further, so then the federal government started boarding up their buildings. The Chicago government then gave them a citation for building, for doing things they weren't allowed to do, putting up boards. So they are basically declaring war on the federal government, and this is completely out of control. These leftist cities, some of them are hellholes, and it is about the people that live there. They deserve to live in safety, and we have seen what he did in D.C. can be done in every city in the U.S.
I've lived in D.C. for 27 years. He didn't do anything.
Do you know what he did do? It means that when I walk out of my building, Joel, and I can see there are men with guns to look after me, so I can walk to the supermarket in the dark. And I'm in a bit of a sketchy area, I can't lie. So I would not be able to do that if those troops weren't there.
But you could have done it before, and I lived in those areas, in fact, before they even redeveloped, and this is just a farcical argument. What he's trying to do is to intimidate Democrats and to intimidate the American population into listening to whatever he wants. There's no law enforcement mandate right now for these troops. They're just show troops, and it's a real waste of taxpayer dollars.
No, I think the real issue here is that there are unknown judges blocking the president from doing things.
He actually nominated the judges who are blocking him, and they were confirmed by the United States Senate. That is how our system works.
And what's going to happen?
And if he wants to win in court, he should go to court.
They're going to bring these judges before the House, impeach the judges, and they have the majority in the House. They can impeach the judges, and they need to go in front of the Senate and explain their
bring
decisions.
it up. Then they should bring it up.
So many of these rules have been completely beyond their approach.
Benjamin, it's quite hard to draw a comparison between the situation here and what would happen in the UK. But it's a bit like Keir Starmer putting the Territorial Army out on streets with machine guns. And actually, would that then upset the because you have a similar, it's kind of like the local mayors in a sense, or the people who have, or the councillors in the area saying you can't bring this in, Starmer, I don't want your soldiers on my streets. But we want to feel safer. Isn't that just that's what Donald Trump's doing, isn't it?
Well, look, I'm glad Thomas was speaking up Christianity a moment ago, because I think he needs Jesus. We need to love thy neighbour, not terrify them. I just don't believe that American cities are in need of soldiers on the streets. But there is a UK comparison, because Kemi Badenoch, the Conservative Party leader, she said on Sunday, Monday, that we should have a British version of ICE going around the streets of Britain in order to get 150,000 supposedly illegal migrants taken out of the country. Now, I have to say, you know, we have a very different policing culture in Britain to in the US. I don't know how you felt about it since moving there, Bev, but for me, the idea of them all having guns, having this sort of ability to terrify people, I don't think it's progress. I think that would be a step backwards to have to do something like that.
It is different, I have to say, being here, but I quite like some of the scallies in the UK to be terrified when they see a police officer, because at the moment they just aren't. They will shout at our police, they get their phones out, they film them. There's no sense of intimidation or respect for our police officers. And it might just be the fact that you're holding a gun, and frankly you command a bit of respect when you're holding a gun, and I don't want to see that in the UK at all. I do not want to routinely have our armed police. But I admire Donald Trump's vision. I think that's what I find fascinating. When I hear him speak almost every day, I genuinely think his desire, Thomas, I don't know if you agree, is to make the country safer, even if it just feels safer for a woman like me walking down the road.
Absolutely. I'm saying put the troops on the streets of London. London is completely out of control. And you mentioned guns. It's not just the police. I got in big trouble on GB News Breakfast for saying that I think civilians in England should be allowed to carry guns. Because I tell you what doesn't happen in New York City, there is no pickpocketing. No one is grabbing phones off the street, because what is the fear? That they might have a gun in their pocket. If a citizen
and there are no troops in New York City either.
No, if a citizen can protect himself, it is the best way. London is a disaster. As you just saw in one of these headlines, how many phones go to God knows where?
70,000.
It's out of control. I say put the troops on the streets of London.
Look, you know, Bev, I got to tell you, nobody's passing by American police without concern. These cops are tough. They are big. They know how to handle themselves. I have a lot of faith in American law enforcement, and I think the president should too. If he really wants to get to safety, which is a fair point, that vision, he needs to work with the governors and the state elected officials and the local police chiefs and all of that and make it sustainable. Right now, he's basically saying he has no faith in the American law enforcement system or the Constitution or the rule of law, and that weakens our democracy.
You do raise a good point, though, because what happens when these troops get taken off the streets? Like, it isn't something that can be maintained in perpetuity.
No.
And I suppose we would be the same, Benjamin, is that if we had troops on the streets, and I have to say I would be quite happy to see some on the streets of London in these areas where crime is particularly bad. I wouldn't object to that, but it couldn't be permanent.
But I think when you talk about freedom, I don't think many of us would feel very free if we're going to the shops or nipping to a pub on the evening and we're seeing soldiers as we do it. I think that would feel like a police state. I reckon ordinary law-abiding people wouldn't feel more comfortable in that scenario. And the truth is, actually, it'd be quite nice in this country just to see police officers on the streets, let alone soldiers. That might actually help it. You know, I was threatened at knife point for my phone a couple of years ago on the South Bank by the Thames, and and the police were nowhere to be seen. And yet the crime happens in that area all the time, and they didn't send officers. So actually, we do a start just to have police officers on the beat before we start thinking about soldiers with guns.
Yeah. In fact, on that, can we talk? We got time for one more story. Can we look at the Daily Express? Tories pledging a blitz on these scumbag store thieves. What are the Conservatives saying that's new, Benjamin? Anything?
Well, I mean, it's a good question because I'm not sure they did much of this when they were in power. I mean, it comes on the back of the Daily Mail's front page, which is that a gang that was allegedly smuggled 40,000 police officers had been caught. But the Daily Express says that more career criminals will be jailed under plans to build stronger cases against shoplifters. Well, I think that's probably easier said than done. The truth is, and it goes exactly to what I just said, that the numbers of people shoplifting has gone through the roof, including in cities. And when you speak to big organisations like the Co-op or Tesco, the Co-op in particular, they've now given members of staff cameras on their badges so that they can turn it on and film people threatening them and stealing. Why have they done that? Because in most cases, police officers no longer turn up to a supermarket or a small shop, an independent shop that says something's been stolen. So actually, you know, having a stronger case is a good idea, but if you don't have the officers to get there and arrest the people in the first place, they just keep doing it.
Right, let's have a quick look at a Prince William story, shall we? I'm sure we're all fans. The 2025 Earthshot Prize finalists have been announced. This is what Prince William had to say.
2030 is a threshold by which future generations will judge us. It is the point at which our actions, or lack of them, will have shaped forever the trajectory of our planet.
So, of course, he's talking about the planets there, 2030. 2030 has been on the horizon, and I wake up in a cold sweat worrying about 2020 and all the changes which the UN wish to push through under their agenda of, you know, their sort of let's change the world and let's save the world agenda, which I don't think is going to help many of us, actually, if I'm completely honest, their sustainability goals. So what did you make of it, Benjamin, William saying that? I mean, the Earthshot is a green prize, isn't it? It's an eco invention, let's say.
Well, yeah, and I think the winner gets £1 million, if I'm not mistaken, and he's been doing it for a couple of years. I mean, personally, I think this is the kind of thing where a royal can have a global impact, can ensure, you know, the threat to the environment is tackled, and also, you know, this is a massive business opportunity for Britain, so encouraging people to come up with the kind of ideas that the Earthshot Prize does, I think is a good idea. I appreciate that some people might find it political, but actually, you know, there's a long history of royals doing this. Prince Philip was a very early, the late Duke of Edinburgh, was a very early adapter to talking about the environment. I think he did a BBC documentary decades ago. And so I would say that this is the kind of legacy that royalty can have that lasts longer than the individual monarch or prince.
Thomas, is it the kind of politics the heir to the throne should be involved in?
No, and I think it's completely mistaken. I mean, what he needs to be doing is distancing himself from the lefty king we've got at the moment. If he wants any future in the country, he needs to be moving away from interfering in these politics. And let me tell you, this 2030 thing is dead in the water. Without the US getting involved, it is not going to happen. The UN is going to have to pull back on this because America is not doing it. So the fact that he's going out there doing this green agenda thing, I'm like, read the room, William. Like, this is not what you need to be doing.
Well, when Trump stood up at the UN General Assembly in New York a couple of weeks ago, I don't think that got anything near the amount of attention it should have got. He absolutely detonated that green agenda, didn't he, Joel? And I, for one, say, well done.
Well, he did to all of our detriment, I'd have to say. Look, the environmental movement in the United States actually goes back over 100 years when President Theodore Roosevelt, a conservative, a Republican, created our conservation movement. And of course, it's gone forward. And even Richard Nixon, a Republican president, created the Environmental Protection Agency here in the United States. And then George Bush signed on to the Rio de Janeiro agreement. So look, it's all of us. We're all living on the same planet. This is not about lefty or righty. This is about survival of our species. And if you don't want our species to survive, keep on ignoring the environment at all of our peril.
Right, the war on British flags is continuing. Now, I feel this needs a little explanation for you, Joel. If I say to you that in the UK, ex-professional footballers often get involved in politics and people listen, I might explain it. Here you go, here's Gary Neville.
I just kept thinking as I was driving home last night that we're all being turned on each other, and the division that's being created is absolutely disgusting. Mainly created by angry, middle-aged white men who know exactly what they're doing. Funnily enough, on one of my development sites last week, there was a Union Jack flag put up, and I took it down instantly.
So, Joel, that is what's known as a proper Mancunian accent, right there. So
I didn't understand half of it, but that's okay.
I know. Well, we're just.
I'm joking.
Let me paraphrase. What he's saying there, he's a very wealthy man. He's become a property developer, and he was obviously a Man United footballer. He was saying that all of the division in the UK at the moment is being caused by white middle-aged men hanging flags. Now, this came off the back of those attacks at the synagogue in Prestwich in Manchester. That is what has wound so many people up, is that they feel he's focusing his ire in the wrong place. Is he?
I think there's a lot of blame to go around in all directions right now, and quite frankly, I think that we need to look at our leaders primarily as the ones who set the tone. Again, I'll go back to what I said earlier. I think that Prime Minister Starmer, he was a day late and a dollar short, as we say here in the United States. He should have been speaking out against anti-Semitism before the attack. And let's just add here, when the UK recognized the state of Palestine, there were warnings ahead of time. If you do this, you're going to create an incitement atmosphere. The Jewish community was very nervous about that, and they can rightly say that that was the result. So we need our leaders to all proactively get ahead of this.
Thomas, what did you make of what Gary Neville had to say?
Well, I think the number one claim of this is that why on earth does a footballer think anyone cares about what he has to say? You were paid to kick a ball around a field, and now all of a sudden he's pining on politics. I just think these people are so out of touch. Who cares what he thinks? He knows nothing about the real world. He hasn't lived in the real world since he made his millions. The fact that he's wandering the streets blaming white men on putting flags up just shows you how completely out of touch these footballers are. I'm sick of hearing from
I have a different take on it, actually. I have to say, I grew up on the same streets as Gary Neville, and he knows that those streets are different, spectacularly different to when him and I grew up in Bury. And what he failed to do, I think, in that little speech was to consider the concerns of the white middle-aged man hanging up a flag. He actually said on one of his building sites, he took down a flag. He needs to think why. And he's right about the division, though, isn't he, Benjamin? Because I like the analogy, I'm sure you've heard it all, I'm sure you've all heard it before, which is the red and the black ants or brown ants in a jar. You put ants in a jar, they will live side by side. You shake the jar, they start to fight. The red ants fight the brown ants, and you have to always ask who is shaking the jar. And I think that's what's happened in the UK. And I think that's kind of what he was trying to say, but he didn't follow it through enough, because if he's saying stop fighting amongst each other because the solution to this is going to be digital ID, we're going to have no cash, you're going to have greater restrictions on protests, then I'm with him on that. Absolutely, we do have to be aware of who's shaking the jar. Is that what he was trying to say, Ben, or was he literally just criticising the men on his building site who've come with a flag?
Well, I think linking it with the attacks last week is the wrong thing to do. That's not helping anybody. But to say that the temperature is being turned up and that people are being driven against each other, that people are being encouraged to be angry, I think he's got a point. And actually, you know, there are some people that have been putting up the English flag or the Union flag, and they're not doing it to celebrate all of Britain. They're doing it to try and taunt and intimidate some other people who are British citizens and our fellow countrymen. And so, actually, the idea that a working-class, middle-aged white man like Gary Neville is saying that is quite helpful, because surely he understands those people because they're his people.
I think he's just doing it because, well, those people are doing that because they're frightened about the complete lack of British identity and what they see as the unfairness with their taxpayers' money going to people who they think have not contributed to the system, and therefore arrive and they look at their paycheck at the end of every month and go, I've spent what? Or like, what is my tax? Like, what have I got left? And who is getting that money? I think that's what wound people up. I think we've got time to go to one guest at the moment. Let's just quickly go to talk about the fact that there's chaos on the streets of Chicago. Immigration officials and protesters are clashing on the streets. Donald Trump has spoken of deployment of the troops. This is what he said.
very severe. We're going to have very severe. We're going to find out who's going after our federal agents. So when you look at Chicago, they've had probably 50 murders in the last 6 or 7 months, 8 months. Many, many people shot, like 30, 40, 50 people shot. Didn't die, but they've been shot. It's like a war zone. And then I listen to the governor and the mayor get up and say how they have it under control. They don't. It's probably worse than almost any city in the world.
So joining me now is attorney John Deaton. John, can you just explain what's going on here with this lawsuit and what might the implications be for President Trump?
Well, sure. Chicago and the state, Illinois, filed a injunction against President Trump to stop him from sending troops from Texas, federalizing the National Guard, to go into Chicago. They're claiming that he needs to go through the governor to do that. And under normal circumstances, that is true. President Trump, however, can protect ICE agents and federal buildings by sending troops in because those are federal assets. The law allows him to do that, but engaging in local police activity, that is not generally allowed unless there is an emergency or something that President Trump can cite to as precedent. That's what's happening right now.
And is this an issue that you think is very close to Donald Trump's heart? You know, there's some things you think he will not back down on, and I have a feeling that this is going to be one of them.
Well, yeah, the first thing he said is he pleaded with the Democratic governors across the country or mayors and said, listen, you have a crime problem. The residents want us to come in and provide public safety to the public. Ask me and I'll come and help you solve this crime problem. Now, politics gets in the way and the Democratic governors say, no, you're exaggerating the problem and we don't want you here. Some of the Republican governors have taken President Trump on that, like in Memphis, Tennessee. But I do think President Trump is sincere. Residents are sending messages saying, please, I'd like to be able to walk the street without getting robbed. Can you send help to us? And I think that he takes that serious.
Yeah, I think so too. I genuinely do. But as we've discussed a little earlier tonight, what happens next? Because you can't leave federalized troops on the streets forever. At some point, you have to send them back to their proper jobs.
For sure. And listen, going into Chicago is a lot different than going into D.C. or going into Memphis, which is much more centralized. Chicago is a big decentralized city. It will be quite expensive. And so I think at first you're going to see a presence. It'll be talking about protecting those ICE agents from people retaliating against ICE. And I think then if it has a good reception by the people, I think that Trump's hoping to impact and have an impact on the 2026 midterm elections.
Okay. Thank you, John. John Deaton there, attorney. I really appreciate your time this evening. Have you had a nice time, fellas?
Oh, it's been fantastic.
Very fun.
Now, Thomas, before we go, because we don't have long, what were you telling me about the chat in Washington about this show?
Oh, everyone wants to be on this show. Yeah, this is the place to be now. Best place to spend your evening, 7 till 9. We're very
Aren't you lucky?
I'm having a great time.
Even the lefties, you see, we get pushback from the Democrats who say, we're not going to come on, Bev, you're just going to be mean to us. Is that right?
There was nothing mean about this. This was great.
Oh, good. Right. Well, there you go. You've heard it here. If you're watching and you are a Democrat, I'd love you to come on and have a conversation with me. I'll never be mean to you. Thank you so much to Benjamin Butterworth this evening and all of my other guests. Thomas and Joel as well, thank you so much. I will see you again next week. GB News will be back on in only 4 hours. It will be Eamon. I'll see you tomorrow night.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello, very good morning to you. I'm here with the GB News weather update coming to you from the Met Office. Now for many today it is going to be another largely fine one, except we do have a band of rain that's pushing its way southwards already across Scotland and Northern Ireland and starting to feed into parts of Northern England, and it is going to make its way a bit further south across other parts of Northern England, perhaps into the far north of Wales as we go through the day. But it's mostly light, just a bit of drizzly rain, nothing especially heavy. And then to the north of this, some decent bright sunny weather developing across much of Scotland and Northern Ireland, and also to the south some bright sunny breaks as well, and it's here where we're going to have the highest temperatures. We're looking at highs of around 17 or 18 Celsius, and the sunshine really will play a part in how warm it's going to feel. If you get some decent sunshine, again, it's going to feel pretty warm indeed. As we go through the end of the day, staying fine across much of central southern England and Wales, some late sunshine here, but meanwhile across parts of Northern England a cloudier, damper end to the day. Meanwhile across Scotland and Northern Ireland, well, the rain will have cleared through, so it's largely fine to end the day here, albeit a few blustery showers across the far north of mainland Scotland, also affecting Orkney and Shetland as well. Then as we go overnight, that band of rain, still pretty light, is going to continue to edge a bit further south, so pushing into the Midlands and across much of Wales. Ahead of this, towards the south, there could be some pockets of mist and fog developing, similar to this morning really. Meanwhile, further north, there are also going to be some clear skies. Here it could turn a little chilly, rural spots may get close to freezing, a touch of grass frost isn't out of the question, and for many, yeah, a bit of a fresh start, except for those under the cloud, under the drizzly rain, and all of that is going to edge a bit further southwards still as we go through tomorrow, pushing across southern counties. Again, nothing heavy, just a bit of damp weather for a little bit of time. Brighter skies following across other areas, albeit a bit more rain pushing into the far northwest of Scotland and some blustery winds here. Elsewhere, light winds for many, so feeling warm again in any sunshine.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
I'm Andrew Pearce. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world. Am I allowed to talk then? No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Miriam, you can't be serious. Scrapping the triple lock on state pensions? Madness.
Andrew, we just can't carry on pretending. The numbers just don't add up. We've got to be honest with people. We've got to face the facts. That's what people want.
Well, that's what you get on GB News and on Britain's Newsroom. Lively debates, lively conversation.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first, and we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pearce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun. No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think for far too long in this country, millions of people felt as though they weren't represented at all by the establishment media.
GB News was needed because there literally was no other voice. Everyone was saying the same thing.
GB News exists because there is a desperate need for fearless journalism that puts the people first.
GB News came on the scene as a disruptor, and it has always been a disruptor ever since.
The mainstream is all about keeping the status quo as it is, ticking along quite nicely. They don't want to ask difficult questions.
But journalism is journalism at the end of the day, and we're not here to serve any masters. Our masters are our audience.
Charlie Peters, he gave a voice to the victims of grooming gangs, and now, of course, it's led to a national inquiry.
GB News exists to make sure those concerns are put forward and people feel as though what they want to ask is put to those in power.
We don't take orders from anyone. We ask the questions our viewers and listeners want answering.
I know what's actually being discussed by my family and my friends. Us ordinary, hard-working British people have had enough. We've had enough.
They're fed up with the same old establishment nonsense. Everything that we do is opening up conversations that others are afraid to go at. Why are you illegally bringing people into Britain?
That is our job. Our job is to get to the truth.
If it's important to you watching or listening at home, then it's important to us as well.
That's what makes us the fearless champion of Britain.
Very, very good evening to you. Welcome to GB News Tonight with me, your host, Martin Daubney. Now, coming up on tonight's action-packed show, the Tories have announced a whopping £47 billion worth of spending cuts in their latest policy proposal. I'll be speaking to the Shadow Business Secretary, Andrew Griffith, in just a short moment's time. And meanwhile,
we must leave the ECHR and repeal the Human Rights Act.
Kemi Badenoch has finally come round to backing leaving the ECHR. But is this too little, too late? When Reform suggested this over a year ago. And
the division that's being created is absolutely disgusting. Mainly created by angry, middle-aged white men.
That bang was the sound of Gary Neville's reputation going up in smoke as Gary Neville